We learn about quicksort. So before we start, an introduction about quicksort is one of the important sorting algorithm, and now we're going to understand how quicksort works. So it does basically work on divide and conquer a method, and it uses recursion. So if you know recursion, so always recursion needs a base case. Okay, so for sorting an array, what would be the base case? Okay, so base case for an array normally would be if the length of array is 1 or 0, you return the array. So any array, if you want to recurse, so basically most of the scenarios that would be your base case. Okay, so for quicksort also, the base case is if length of the array is less than 2, you return the array. Okay, you got it. For example, if the array is 1, okay, so a is 1, so you don't need to sort this, correct? Even if you don't need to sort an empty array, so that is what this base case implies. So what happens if the array size is more than 2? Okay, so let's take that into consideration, and we have an array here. 24, 15, 67 are the array elements, in which 24 is the first element, and 15 is the second element, and 67 is the third element. So how quicksort works is, it takes a pivot. Could be the first element, could be the last element, and it could be the middle element. In this scenario, we will take the pivot as the first element, so 24. Okay, and then we would check on this array if the element is lesser than the pivot or greater than the pivot. Okay, so since pivot is 24, we would ignore that into consideration, and we will check from the second element onwards. So now you will take 15 is greater or lesser than 24. It is less than 24, so you would segregate into lesser, and there are no other elements in this array which is greater than 24. So our less is 15 and the pivot is 24. Next we would check what is greater than the pivot in this array, 67. Okay, so the array would be sorted out as lesser element, pivot element, and the greater element. So this is how you sort the um, using quicksort. So they're using quicksort. So this is for element of 3. What if the elements in the array is 6? So we have another example. So this is the array with the 6 element. So as before, we will take the pivot as 65 here. Okay, and all the elements which are lesser than 65 would be present in this array. So which is 23, 44, and 56, and 1. Okay, all the elements which is greater than the pivot is in this array. So since this is pivot is less than 1 and greater is less than 1, so this would be returning to the base case. So this would be 65 and 78, but this needs to be quick sorted again, correct? So what happens, you have to call quicksort over here, and you repeat the same again. So here you will have a pivot, which is the first element, and all the elements which is less than the pivot, that is 1. Okay, and then you have greater elements. So all the elements which are greater is 44 and 56. So now you need to do quick sort over here. So again you take this array, okay, and do the quick sort. So less pivot would be 44, so less would be nothing, so 56, right? Then you combine all this um, all these elements in this array, you would have got the sorted array, right? So now your sorted array is less, which is 1, so less, so less array is sorted, right? So this is the one, so this has been sorted, so 1, 23, 44, 46, and now the pivot, which is 65 and greater. So this is how quicksort works. So it continuously breaks the arrays into pieces. It divides into three sections. One is lesser section, pivot section, and greater section. So for any number of array, it would do the pivoting. Okay, so that is how quicksort works. Thank you.